Well, that did not go as planned.
You are Locked On Syracuse, your daily podcast on the Syracuse Orange. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, everyone, and welcome into Locked On Syracuse. I'm Jackson Holzer, and thank you for making us your first listen of every single day here in the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day, and we are free and available wherever you get your podcasts, even after Syracuse football gets absolutely annihilated at Pitt tonight, 41-13. This offense, this high-powered attack led by Kyle McCord, just was awful all game long. 5 interceptions from Kyle. Offensive line did him no favors. Receivers dropping passes. The defense actually had a pretty good game. They actually played pretty well, but it didn't matter because Kyle decided that he wanted to throw 3 touchdowns to the other team. Just a really bad game from Syracuse all around, and that's why they got destroyed 41-13. We'll talk McCord. We'll talk about the offense. We'll talk about coaching. And we'll talk about the road ahead for Syracuse football after this absolute debacle at Pitt tonight. But before we get to all that, this episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Place your first $5 bet, and you'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. So I think we've all been told this at one point in life or another, or we have said this at one point in time during our lives. Most of you guys who are watching or listening to this are older than me. You guys probably have kids. I do not. I am not old enough yet, really. I'm not mad. I'm just disappointed. Which we all know is so much worse to hear. We all know that's so much worse. I'm not mad. I'm not mad at Syracuse football. I'm not mad at them. They tried. They gave effort. I'm not questioning their effort. I'm just disappointed. I'm disappointed in their game because for the second time this season after a bye week, this team just forgot how to play football, and really it was on the offensive side. Let's set the stage for this game and why I'm disappointed in Syracuse football. If you recall, they got out to a 2-0 start. Then they fell flat on their face against Stanford. And in that post game, if you go watch that back, I was mad at Syracuse football. You know why I was mad at Syracuse football? Because they should have handled their business. And they were a play away from escaping with a win over Stanford. But you know what? They lost. They lost. It was a tough one. I was mad at Syracuse for that, but they recover. They go on a 3-game win streak. They get a ranked win at UNLV for their second ranked win of the season. They're 5-1 heading into the bye week. They're going up against a Pitt team that's 6-0, also coming off a bye week. So anyone that wants to use the bye week excuse, well, there's no excuse because actually both of Syracuse's losses after bye weeks have come against teams also coming off a bye week. So that's the stage here. Winner, in this case, Pitt, would firmly establish themselves as a contender in the ACC. And the loser, in this case, Syracuse, we all know that. They just lost 41-13. You would know it would probably not be their year. That they would not really be a real contender in the ACC. And you would just be hopeful that they can still put together a solid regular season and be a good bowl team and at least use this year as a building block for years to come, right? Is that fair to say? I mean, if you look at Pitt's perspective, right, they got redshirt freshman Eli Holstein, who got dinged up at the end of the game. Hopefully he's okay. He never should have been in the game to begin with at the end in that fourth quarter there. But, you know, they got a bright future with Holstein. And if you look at Syracuse, it's a brand new coaching staff, first-year head coach. Yeah, they won't have McCord next year, but you know, you have a good regular season that obviously builds momentum for following years. That's the optimistic way of looking at it if you lose this game. And obviously we'll talk about it in the road ahead. Syracuse hadn't won at Pitt prior to tonight, and actually that streak continues, since 2001. And now I don't know what it is about Pittsburgh. Maybe it's the water. I don't know. They just can't win there. They can't. And what makes this loss really, really hurt, and why I'm not mad, I'm just disappointed in Syracuse football, is that it wasn't actually the defense that let us down. If you go back to the keys before the game that I laid out, right? Special teams was one of them. I mean, they missed a field goal, but other than that, I think the special teams was fine. They didn't get much of a chance. Containing Eli Holstein and Desmond Reid, and actually Syracuse football did a pretty good job on them. They did a pretty good job on Eli Holstein and Desmond Reid. Eli Holstein for the game was 11 of 15 for 108 and 2 touchdowns. But in the first half, already when Syracuse was out of this game, Eli Holstein was what? Okay, I got it right here. He was 5 for 9 for 36 yards and 1 touchdown. Pitt had 83 total yards in the first half. They did a fine job on the Pitt offense. Pitt had 5 possessions in the first half, 1 touchdown, 1 field goal off after a short field, so it was a good stop by the defense, and 3 punts. And the game started with Syracuse on defense, and they get a 3 and out. And you're thinking, here we go. This is it. This is our chance for Syracuse football to establish themselves as a contender in the ACC. Make a statement. Get their 3rd ranked win. And instead, this Syracuse offense, which prior to this game was one of the best offenses in the country, made that Pitt defense, and I want to give credit to Pitt. Shout out to Pitt because they were the far superior team tonight. Before I say this, they were the far superior team. They earned that win. Their defense was spectacular. But going into that game, they were 8th in the ACC in total yards allowed per game. 8th in the ACC, right above Syracuse, which was 9th. There's a reason why a lot of people thought this would be a high-scoring game. It ended up being a high-scoring game, just not in the way that we imagined. And this Syracuse offense made Pitt's defense look like it was the steel curtain, and you can add on Aaron Donald and Darrell Gill to that too, right? Think about Mean Joe Green and Aaron Donald next to each other, 2 of the best defensive tackles in NFL history, and Darrell Gill next to Mel Blount. How about that? Look, we knew going in that Pitt's pass rush was going to be good. They have 18 sacks in 6 games. They just sacked the Cal guy 6 times 2 weeks ago before their bye week. We knew they had a ferocious pass rush, but my goodness, this one hurts for Syracuse football. Once again, I'm not mad. I'm just disappointed. I'm disappointed because I expected better. I expected better from Kyle McCord and all the weapons he had. Syracuse, before the game, it turns out that Marlowe Wax is healthy on defense. He's playing. Trevor Pena, who it seemed like he wasn't going to play, the star slot receiver, he's playing. He's active. He was on the field. I saw him. There's no injury excuse either. But the whole offense, man, the entire offense just, they had their worst game of the season. Their absolute worst game of the season. We'll break it down further, but first, a quick break. So I first gave pre-alcohol a try when I was with my friends, and I drank it before, and you wouldn't believe how on top of my game I felt the very next morning. For the best results, make pre-alcohol your first drink of the night, and make sure you pace yourself, hydrate, and get a good night's sleep, and you'll wake up feeling refreshed and ready to take on the day. Go to ZBiotics.com/LockedOnCollege to learn more and get 15% off your first order when you use code LockedOnCollege at checkout. ZBiotics is backed with 100% money-back guarantee. So if you're unsatisfied for any reason, they'll refund your money. No questions asked. Remember to head to ZBiotics.com/LockedOnCollege and use the code LockedOnCollege at checkout for 15% off. You can now win up to 100 times your money on PrizePicks with as little as 4 correct picks. And PrizePicks is the only real money daily fantasy platform with an injury insurance policy, so your lineups stay in place even if one of your players gets injured. If your player leaves in the first half and doesn't return for some reason, right? If they're hurt, guess what? PrizePicks keeps your lineup live. Sign up today and get $50 instantly when you play $5. You don't even need to win to receive the $50 bonus. It's guaranteed. PrizePicks is the best way to win real money this football season. Which players are going off, which ones aren't? Kyle McCord did not go off tonight. Make your picks in less than 60 seconds and turn your sports opinions into real money all season long over on PrizePicks. And heading into today, Kyle McCord's more or less total for the game was 326.5 passing yards. He only had slightly less at 321 now. I don't know what his more or less was for interceptions, but it was definitely up. He had 5 of them. But anyway, download the app today and use code LOCKEDONCollege to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Download the app today and use code LOCKEDONCollege to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. PrizePicks, run your game. Syracuse football gets absolutely annihilated at Pitt tonight, 41-13. This offense, which had been so good through the first 6 games of the year, it had been so dominant. The clear strength of the team had its worst performance of the season, and it's not even close. Not even close. Once again, this defense for Syracuse football gets a 3-and-out stop on the first series of the game. And here we go. We're licking our chops, right? So what happens? What happens? Well, on Kyle McCord's first pass of the game, he nearly throws an interception, which was a precursor for what was to come. He nearly throws an interception. He was targeting Umari Hatcher down the right sideline. I believe it was Umari Hatcher, and Hatcher just wasn't open. He just wasn't open. I don't know why he was throwing to him there, but he did, and luckily it wasn't intercepted. The next play, Kyle McCord escapes a sack, and he finds Jackson Meeks for a first down. Jackson Meeks broke that tackle. Nice. You're thinking at that point, or you know what I'm thinking at that point, when Meeks breaks that tackle and gets the first down on Syracuse's first offensive possession. Man, that was Pitt's chance. Kyle McCord threw it right to him. That was their chance. And now Syracuse is going to march down the field. I was wrong. I was wrong, because then Kyle McCord decides to overthrow Oronde Gadsden on a seam route. And by the way, Oronde Gadsden got hurt and did not return. He got hurt at the end of the first half, did not return, was seen in street clothes. That's great. That's great news on top of everything that's going on right now. We got an injury to Oronde Gadsden. And then after that pass, after Syracuse starts throwing on their first 3 plays, Kyle McCord throws a pick 6. And it was entirely on him. This pick was entirely on him. He just didn't see the defender for Pitt. Credit to them for taking it to the house. It's 7-0. All right. We've seen Kyle McCord throw a pick 6 before. We've seen him throw picks before. How's he going to respond? He's responded all season long, but tonight he did not, because on the next series, on a 3rd down, on a batted ball, targeting Oronde Gadsden over the middle, he gets picked again. It was a great play by that Pitt player, but that's his 2nd interception of the game. 2 picks in the first 5 minutes. Not what I thought was going to happen. I don't want to get on McCord too much, because it wasn't all on him. I mean, he was 35 of 64, 321, 5 interceptions. I think it's safe to say that most, if not all, the interceptions were on Kyle McCord. But I don't want to beat a dead horse. We know that he was bad. We know he was bad. Let's talk about this offensive line, though. Let's talk about that offensive line. I mentioned that Pitt had the steel curtain. Well, if they had the steel curtain, then their defensive line must have been the purple people eaters. Seriously? Did you see how often Kyle McCord was pressured? I'm not going to give Kyle McCord a pass. I'm not. I am not giving him a pass. He was awful, and he proved a lot of people right who doubted him. But I'm just saying, this Syracuse offensive line didn't do him any favors either. I mean, Pitt for the game finished with 4 sacks. That's not great, but it's worse than that. I mean, I don't know how many pressures Pitt had, but it seemed like on every single drop back for Kyle McCord, there was pressure. We talked about how Syracuse is a great short passing game that could mitigate that. All you got to do is hold up for like a second or two, and Kyle McCord's going to get rid of the ball. They couldn't. They couldn't hold up at all. This offensive line, everyone. I'm not going to exonerate anyone. Atrocious. Absolutely atrocious. Kyle McCord was terrible. This offensive line was terrible. How about the pass catchers on Syracuse? Did they do Kyle McCord any favors? No. I counted 4 drops in the first half. 4 of them. And you could pick whatever one you want. Jackson Meeks had a drop down the right sideline. It was a nice back shoulder throw. And yeah, it was a tough catch for Jackson Meeks to make. It was a tough catch. But you know what? He got 2 hands on the ball. You get 2 hands on the ball, you got to catch it. You got to catch it. 2 hands on the ball. Oronde Gadsden had a drop. LeQuint Allen had a drop in the fourth quarter, but honestly, who cares? Nothing mattered after halftime anyway. Umari Hatcher had a drop. Darrell Gill had a drop. Take your pick. Whether they go in the stat sheet as drops or not, all 4 of those guys at one point in the first half had 2 hands on the football and failed to come up with the catch. And on a couple of them, they actually led to turnovers later on. Maybe the game's different if they catch the ball. I don't know. Probably not. Probably not. But you never know. This offense, I don't know what else to say about it. Because it had been so great through 6 games. And I didn't see this coming. I did not. Credit to my dad, at least. Or do I blame my dad? Because he texted me right beforehand he was feeling a stinker. And I said to him, what are you talking about? I don't think this is going to be a stinker. I think if Syracuse loses, they're going to lose close. They did not lose close, ladies and gentlemen. They lost 41-13, and it's a lot worse than the score indicated. At least Kyle McCord had over 300 yards. Hope Fran Brown is happy because clearly he has Kyle McCord on his fantasy team, considering he was still in the game late in the fourth quarter for... Look, I'll talk about it now. Kyle McCord was in this game with 5 minutes left. They're down 41-13. Now, I understand the argument of, well, you don't want to kill his confidence for next week because they still got to play next week. And we'll talk about that. We'll talk about how Syracuse can bounce back because they can. They can bounce back. But you don't want to kill his confidence. I understand that. But injuries can happen on any play in football. And we all know that. If you watch the game long enough, you know that a lot of guys are going to get hurt. And if you play football long enough, chances are not only are you going to get hurt, you're going to suffer a serious injury. You're going to blow your knee out. You're going to break a bone. You're going to dislocate something. You're going to suffer a concussion or 2, maybe 3. I don't know. You play football. It's a violent sport. It's a violent sport. And you cannot wrap players in bubble wrap and prevent injuries from happening. I understand that. But you know what's like the most brutal injuries? The most brutal injuries are when it is at a meaningless point in the game. A meaningless point. And to me, I am not willing to take that chance. As bad as Kyle McCord had played, as bad, he is still the starter for this team. There's no reason to change. You cannot switch starters for next week. There's no quarterback controversy, right? No quarterback. He's the starter. I know he was bad. He's a starter going forward. You cannot have him in the game with 5 minutes left down 28 points. I know you want to build up his confidence for next week. First of all, they didn't score on that possession. They missed a field goal from 48 yards. You're not guaranteed to score a touchdown. He could have thrown his 6th interception. You don't know what's going to happen with him in the game. And second of all, if he gets hurt in a meaningless point, did anyone see what happened to Chris Godwin of the Buccaneers? Hurt in garbage time. He's out for the season. Oh, by the way, he's going into his free agency year. That might have cost him money too. You see my point? You can't take away injuries from the game, but they could easily happen in a meaningless time, especially when you have backups in the game with Kyle McCord. And look, Yassine Willis is a backup, and he got hurt. It happens. I feel bad for Yassine Willis. Hopefully he's okay. It looked like he got his ankle rolled up. Hopefully he's all right. What if that was Kyle? He can't be in the game there, but hey, at least he got his 300 yards. He got 321 for the game. So Syracuse gets destroyed. This offense was horrific. The defense actually wasn't terrible. Coming up, we'll talk about the road ahead for Syracuse football. Hey, NFL fans, you can start the season with a big return on FanDuel, America's #1 sports book. So when you get a hunch in the middle of a game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. And you'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. And Syracuse football, they were only 5.5-point underdogs tonight. And let's just say, to put it nicely, they did not cover. That's the nice way to put it, but hopefully Syracuse football, they're at home next week against Virginia Tech. Finally back home. First time since the Holy Cross game, honestly. Hopefully they can bounce back. Look for maybe a bounce back game in that one as soon as FanDuel releases their odds. You want to check those out when they're out? Visit FanDuel.com. That's FanDuel.com. So the road ahead for Syracuse football after just a nightmare performance at Pitt tonight. They lose 41-13. Syracuse football is now 5-2, 2-2 in the conference. Meanwhile, Pitt is now 7-0. Congratulations to them. Pitt is a team that seems like to be a force to be reckoned with. And honestly, they control their own destiny from here on out, Pitt. So congratulations to Pitt. Major props to you guys. Big game next week for Pitt, by the way. They don't they have at SMU? That's going to be a good one. That's another big one for Pitt. They also got Clemson, Louisville, but that's for Pitt. If you're a fan of Pitt and you're watching this, there you go. Right? So hats off to you guys. You control your own destiny from here on out for the college football playoff. As far as Syracuse is concerned, because most of you guys who are watching or listening are Syracuse fans, they got Virginia Tech next week. Thankfully, for those that may be concerned, there are no more bye weeks. There are no more bye weeks for Syracuse football this year. So take that for what it's worth. If you think that that was maybe one of the reasons why Syracuse is struggling or struggled tonight. No bye weeks left. They got Virginia Tech. Virginia Tech is a team that we kind of wrote off at the beginning of the season after they lost at Vanderbilt. It actually turns out Vanderbilt's not bad this year. Right? And we'll be able to preview Virginia Tech more. But I think this is another test for this coaching staff and for this team as a whole. How are you going to respond after you just got your butts kicked? Let's face it, they just got their butts kicked. Brutal. How are they going to respond? I would love if Syracuse were to go out and just crush Virginia Tech. I don't know if they will, but I would love if they could. I would love if they would, I should say. I would love that. Because at this point of the year, you might be asking yourself, what is there to play for? What is there to play for? Because they are out. They can't make the college football playoff, and they will not be in the ACC title game. It's over. right? But you can still have a successful regular season. You still can. It's right there, right? First of all, you got one more non-conference game left. That's UConn at home. Well, there you go. You win that one, and they should win that one. That's 6 wins. You're a bowl team for the 3rd consecutive season. You can say that means nothing, but to me, that's something, being a bowl team 3 years in a row. Especially for a program like Syracuse, that a bowl game is not a right that's given out every single year. It's not like Ohio State. It's not like Michigan. It's not like Alabama. Those teams they don't care about winning 6 games. They care about much more than that. But for Syracuse, a good start to getting maybe to that level one day. I don't know if they ever will get to that level, but a good start is, well, put together consecutive bowl appearances, right? Get to 6 wins at least. You beat UConn, you have 6 wins. There you go. As far as what else they can do, well, you got Virginia Tech at home. That's a winnable game. You got at Boston College. It's a winnable game. At Cal is a winnable game. And Miami at home, I mean, you are at home. You're going to be an underdog in that one, but maybe you give Syracuse a puncher's chance. But there is still a pathway here to where, yeah, they're no longer going to contend for the ACC crown. It's not going to happen this year. They're not going to be in the college football playoff, but can they win 8 games? Sure. They got 5 games left. All they got to do is go 3-2, and they have an 8-win regular season. I would say that's pretty good. And I have faith that they cannot possibly look worse than they did against Pitt. I don't see that happening. It can't be worse. It can't be worse than what we just saw. So, it's going to be a test. Can this team respond? Can they respond with seemingly, right? You're not going to contend for the ACC. You're not going to contend for the college football playoff anymore. Can you still play with pride? Not quit on the year? You don't quit. Don't quit on the year. I will say this. I'm not going to say moral victory. There's no moral victories. But I'm at least happy that Syracuse didn't quit in the second half. In fact, I think they won the second half 13-10. Yeah, they won the second half 13-10. At least I'm proud. I'm happy that they did that. They salvaged something. They still got embarrassed. They still got blown out, but they won the second half. Maybe you can build on that. But tonight, from the get-go, really not the defense, honestly, it was the offense. They weren't prepared. Kyle McCord was off. The receivers were off. The offensive line was pathetic. And Pitt is a really good football team. And when you're not at your best against a team like Pitt, that's what can happen. That is what can happen. So, unfortunately, Syracuse football loses at Pitt 41-13. It did not go our way. Thank you all so much for making Locked On Syracuse your first listen. For your second listen, check out the Locked On ACC podcast. Alex Dono and Kenton Gibbs, they keep it real. They bring you the truth about where your favorite ACC team stands within the conference. I'm sure they're going to have a little celebration about how right they were about Kyle McCord and let them have their week. I mean, they've given us 6 weeks to be, not 6, actually really 8 weeks because you factor in 2 bye weeks. They've given us 2 months to gloat about how great Kyle McCord is. So let's give him this one time to be happy about how bad Kyle McCord was against Pitt. You can find Locked On ACC on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts, folks. Thank you all so much for watching. Thank you all so much for listening. If you like this video, click that like button. I wish it was under better circumstances, but I cannot control the outcome of games. If you like this video so much, hit that subscribe button. Tell all your friends. And hopefully Syracuse football can rebound next week against Virginia Tech.